You know that moment when a conversation ends but your brain refuses to clock out. You're brushing your teeth trying to sleep, or staring at the ceiling like a confused raccoon, and suddenly your mind goes, "Hey, remember that thing you said 6 hours ago? Let's ruin the evening with it." That habit is real. It has a name, and no, it does not mean your brain is broken. Research connects this kind of mental replay to rumination and post-event processing, especially after social situations. So why do you keep replaying conversations in your head? Why does your brain take one awkward pause, one weird text, one maybe they hated that joke moment, and treat it like a national emergency? Today we're breaking down the psychology behind that replay loop, why it happens, why it gets worse at night, and why your brain thinks it's helping even when it's doing the exact opposite. And honestly, if your mind has ever turned one 5-minute conversation into a 12-part Netflix drama, this video is for you. 1. Your brain is trying to scan for danger. First, let's start with the uncomfortable truth. Your brain does not care about your peace. It cares about your survival. And to your brain, social mistakes can feel like danger. Humans are built to care about belonging. For most of history, being rejected by your group was not just embarrassing. It was a real threat. So when a conversation feels slightly off, your brain can treat it like unfinished business. It goes back over the moment looking for signs. Did they sound annoyed? Did I talk too much? Did that joke land? Why did they pause before replying? Research on post-event processing shows that after social situations, people can get pulled into repetitive, detailed review of what happened, especially when anxiety is involved. In other words, your brain is basically acting like a terrible security guard. It sees one tiny weird facial expression and goes, "This could destroy the tribe." No, Kevin from accounting did not destroy the tribe. Kevin just said, "Haha, yeah," in a slightly flat tone. But your brain? Your brain is already building a 42-slide presentation called Everything That Went Wrong in That Conversation. 2. You want certainty, and conversations don't give it. This is the second reason people replay conversations. Conversations are messy. You do not get clean endings. You do not get subtitles. You do not get a scoreboard that says, "Good job, you were normal, everyone liked you." Instead, you get vague signals, mixed tones, delayed replies, and the terrifying human mystery known as "what did they mean by that?" So your brain does what brains love to do. It tries to create certainty where there isn't any. That is part of why replaying a conversation can feel weirdly hard to stop. Rumination often acts like a fake problem-solving mode. It feels productive. It feels like if you just think about it one more time, you'll finally crack the code. But research shows rumination is often repetitive negative thinking that keeps the distress going instead of resolving it. That's why you can replay the same sentence 20 times and somehow come out of it feeling less clear than when you started. Your brain keeps saying, "We are close to solving this." You are not close. You are in a psychological hamster wheel wearing pajamas. 3. You're not replaying the conversation. You're replaying your self-image. This part is huge. A lot of the time, people think they are obsessing over the conversation itself, but really they are obsessing over what the conversation might mean about them. Did I sound stupid? Did I seem annoying? Did I come off desperate? Did I talk too much? Did I look insecure? Now the conversation is not just a conversation anymore. It becomes a test of identity, and that's where the replay loop gets vicious. Research shows post-event processing is linked not just to remembering the event, but to negative appraisals of performance and memory biases that can reinforce poor self-evaluation over time. That means your brain is not reviewing the moment like a fair judge. It's more like a mean film critic who already decided the movie was bad before the opening scene. So when you replay a conversation, you're often not asking what happened. You're asking, what if this proves something bad about me? And once your identity gets dragged into it, now it's personal. Now the brain pulls out the big emotional weapons. Now it's not just awkward. Now it's, "I have ruined human interaction forever," which, to be clear, is dramatic. 4. Negative moments stick harder than neutral ones. Here's another reason the replay loop feels so strong. Your brain is more likely to latch on to what felt wrong than what felt fine. You could have a 10-minute conversation with 9 normal moments and 1 weird one. And guess which part your brain saves in 4K Ultra HD? The weird one. Research on rumination shows it is tied to repeated focus on distress and negative themes, and social situations are one of the most commonly reported triggers. Research on post-event processing also shows links to negative memory bias, meaning your mind can become extra good at remembering the parts that support embarrassment, anxiety, or self-doubt. So no, your brain is not being balanced. It is not saying, "Well, That joke was slightly awkward, but they also smiled, kept talking, and invited you back into the conversation. No, your brain grabs the awkward moment by the collar and says, "This one. This is the documentary." That's why replaying conversations can feel so convincing. It's not just that you remember the moment, it's that your memory starts getting edited by your mood. 5. The habit gets worse when you're already stressed or socially anxious. Now let's talk about why this habit gets stronger for some people than others. If you already lean anxious, self-critical, perfectionistic, or hyper-aware of other people's reactions, your brain is much more likely to turn social interactions into review sessions. Research has found a moderate relationship between post-event rumination and social anxiety symptoms, and studies have shown that greater negative post-event processing is linked with greater social anxiety and more negative appraisals of your own performance. That doesn't mean everyone who replays conversations has social anxiety, but it does mean this habit often grows in people whose minds are already on high alert for judgment, mistakes, or rejection. Basically, your brain becomes the world's most exhausting intern. Its full-time job is to look at every conversation and say, "Great meeting, quick question. What if everyone hates us?" 6. Nighttime makes it worse because the world finally gets quiet. Ever notice this habit gets louder at night? That is not your imagination. During the day, your attention is busy. You've got tasks, noise, errands, messages, deadlines, and 5 tabs open in your brain at all times. But at night, when the external stimulation drops, the internal stuff gets a microphone. That is one reason rumination often shows up when people are alone, tired, or mentally unoccupied. Once the world gets quieter, the unresolved thought loop suddenly has room to perform. So you're lying there trying to sleep, and your brain goes, "Now that we're done pretending to be productive, let's revisit that sentence from 2:14 p.m. Fantastic. Exactly what nobody asked for. And because you're tired, you're usually more emotionally vulnerable too. So the conversation does not just come back. It comes back wearing a villain cape. 7. The cruel part. Replaying usually does not help. This is the part nobody likes. Your brain replays conversations because it thinks it is helping you prepare, protect yourself, and avoid future embarrassment. But a lot of the time, it does not improve anything. Research on post-event processing suggests it is associated with worsening negative appraisals and can help maintain social anxiety rather than fix it. Some experts describe this kind of review as something that feels useful in the moment but often increases overthinking instead of improving social performance. That means the replay loop is kind of like repeatedly checking a locked door so many times that eventually you stop trusting your own memory. The behavior feels protective, but it trains your brain to believe the threat is important. So every time you replay a conversation for emotional safety, your brain may quietly learn, "Wow, this must really matter. Better do it again next time." And that is how a habit becomes a loop. 8. So what does it actually mean if you do this? It means a few things. It usually means you care about how you come across. It often means your brain is sensitive to social feedback. It may mean you are trying to prevent future pain by mentally reviewing the past. And if it happens a lot, especially with distress, it can also be a sign you are getting pulled into rumination instead of reflection. And that difference matters. Reflection says, "What can I learn from this?" Rumination says, "Let's suffer about it again, but in higher definition." One helps, the other just keeps reopening the tab. 9. The simple shift that actually helps. Here's the mindset shift. Not every thought deserves a meeting. Just because your brain throws a conversation back on the screen does not mean you have to sit down with popcorn and watch the full director's cut. A better question is this useful, or is this just my brain trying to feel safe? If there is a real lesson there, take the lesson. If not, the replay is probably not wisdom. It is anxiety wearing glasses. That shift lines up with what we know about rumination. The more a thought becomes repetitive, distressing, and hard to control, the less likely it is to be productive problem solving, and the more likely it is to keep the emotional loop alive. Ending. So if you replay conversations in your head, no, you are not weird. You are not the only person whose brain has turned a 2-minute interaction into a psychological crime scene investigation. But it does mean your mind may be trying a little too hard to protect you from discomfort, rejection, or uncertainty. And the wild part is, the more you keep replaying the moment, the more important your brain thinks that moment was. So next time your brain drags up that one awkward sentence from earlier, remember this: it is not always searching for truth. Sometimes it is just searching for control, and that is why the conversation keeps replaying. If you've ever caught yourself doing this, drop a comment with the word replay. And if you want more videos on the weird psychology behind everyday human behavior, Subscribe because your brain is doing way more strange stuff than you think.